New York, and on the new Hot 97 app. Ebro in the morning on Hot 97.
Ebro in the morning, you got Laura Stiles, you have the beautiful Rosenberg.
Thank you very much.
And even the more beautiful Ibtihaj Muhammad here from the U.S. Olympic fencing team with a new book out. It's Proud.
Proud.
You have the book. And then there's this, My Fight for an Unlikely American Dream.
Yes.
Talk about the title. Why the fight for the unlikely American dream?
You know, my whole life, people have been trying to put me in a box, set limitations to what they believe, I'm capable of, what I can and can't do as a Black woman, as a Muslim woman. And I feel like I've just been pushing back. I love to break boundaries. I love to prove people wrong and show them what I can do. And as a minority coming through Team USA in a very white sport of fencing, I was able to transcend sport in a way and change the narrative for a lot of people.
Won the bronze medal most recently, right?
Yes.
And what you were telling me, Laura Stiles, it was a Barbie?
Oh, yeah, because I saw that you teamed up with Mattel to create the first Barbie that looked like you and that wore a hijab.
Mm-hmm. So, Mattel will release a Barbie soon.
Oh, it's not out?
It's not out.
Okay, dope.
It comes out really soon.
Yeah, we've seen the images, but, Yeah.
Well, it's a fencing Barbie. It's me. It's in hijab. I'm excited. I loved Barbie growing up, so I'm very excited.
So how did that come about? Did Mattel reach out to you, or was that something that...
So it's part of their Shiro line, which is they take people like Ava DuVernay, Zendaya, Gabby Douglas, and they... create these dolls that are meant to inspire and hopefully encourage girls to see themselves in roles that traditionally women of color weren't welcome. So, now they have a Barbie that has hijab.
Can you talk to me? My daughter loves Frozen, right? And my daughter also, I find her oftentimes not wanting, she'll be like, Daddy, I don't want my hair out. I want it this way, or I want my hair that way, because obviously she's on television. The girls have, long blonde flowing hair, and they have different types of hair, so she'll want to put on things that make her feel like she's got hair. She's 4 years old. Mm-hmm. Talk about being a young woman and not seeing yourself, like you said, I was in love with Barbie.
Right.
How did that manifest itself as you became an adolescent, a teenager, an adult, and you not seeing yourself?
Yeah.
How did you find the kind of, wherewithal and guidance to not get down on yourself?
So my parents were woke before woke was a thing. Mm-hmm. I remember as a kid, we were only allowed to have black and brown dolls. That's it. So going down the toy aisle, if I already had the two black dolls that were on the shelves, then I left, the store without a doll. And I think this was my mom in particular. This was her way to make sure that her kids saw themselves represented in something as simple as doll play. And when we think about representation, particularly in sport, there's so many athletes that I looked up to. I mean, I looked at Muslim athletes and watched them fast, during Ramadan. Thought that was so cool. I thought fasting was so hard. I'm like, how are they doing this and playing in the NBA? And then we were talking about Serena and Venus, and being able to see them on television as a kid and take the tennis world by storm, be unapologetic about who they were, I think allowed me to unconsciously get off my aspirations as an athlete, as a young athlete, because I didn't know fencing at the Olympic level was a thing. I had no idea. And there was a way for me to just, see myself in that space and be like, you know what? I know that people aren't very accepting, because I'm stepping into this space of fencing as not just, a woman, not just someone who's Black, but also someone who wears hijab as a Muslim woman. So, people, weren't ready for that. They weren't open to that and receptive to that. But I think having athletes like Serena, thinking about Muhammad Ali and all these different people that I looked up to, thinking of it in that way, I feel like it allowed me to kind of push through and see myself in that space.
How old do you start? At what age do you start wearing hijab?
I started wearing hijab at 12.
And I just saw our buddy Hassan Minaj on with Seinfeld, and he was talking about his mother picking him up in hijab and him being like, what do you embarrassment as an assimilating American. For you, what was it like? Did you look forward to starting to wear it? Were you embarrassed and didn't want to?
Mm-hmm. So I feel like the way that my parents did it was kind of cool. We grew up in the same town, from Maplewood, New Jersey, really close to the city. And we were only Muslim family in town, not too many Black families in town, but the way my parents introduced hijab to us, me and my sisters, was, you would wear hijab maybe once or twice to school when you're super young. And then, then you wouldn't wear it on days you had gym, because that just became this, extra layer of trying to figure out how to work out in hijab. And then by the time you had to wear it when you reach puberty, it's like your friends are used to it, your teachers are used to it, and they see your mom. So it was really easy transition to beginning wearing hijab. And then also you have to think of it in a way that, for me, it was very normal. Like Islam and being Muslim was a part of my life. I don't know what it's like not to wear hijab. I don't know what it's like to not pray 5 times a day. Like, these are things that seem very normal to me as a kid. And it wasn't until I started fencing that I realized that my skin color and my faith had the ability to change how people treated me.
Mm.
Yeah.
Now, this just popped in my head, and I know you don't necessarily have the answer to this, but it popped in my head, so I want to ask the question. So you talked about your parents buying you dolls that you could relate to in some way, so you had that representation in your life, and you weren't, I think, doing what so many little black girls had to deal with in this country growing up, which is just like, Barbie's blonde, right?
Yeah.
But on the flip side of that coin, if you're a white parent and you want your kids to feel a certain connection to people of all races, I wonder, like, if you do it the opposite, because you want to get them dolls of women of color, but at the same time, you don't want them to then think of, I could see it being an awkward transition early when it's like, oh, you look like the dolls that I keep in my house. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no. I think it's kind of cool to be that parent. If you're a white parent and you say, I'm going to have a range of dolls, I want to show my kid, the beauty in representation, what inclusiveness looks like. Because think of all the images we're being force fed all the time that are the standards of beauty that are white. They're not, especially
a
years
young
ago,
white child doesn't have to look far to find something that looks like themselves.
Well, no,
is
that part's not what
held in
concerns
high
me.
regard.
And that's the part that's not that doesn't concern me, because of course you're right. Unfortunately, the image that they're being fed is enough that they would never worry about that. But as we've learned, unfortunately, where I live, which I thought was New York City and would be ultimately diverse, I've kind of learned the Upper West Side is not as diverse as I hoped that it was. And you just don't want to run the risk of your kid, and obviously through good parenting, you can ensure I think this doesn't happen, but that the association with women of color is just a doll. You know what I mean? And and that you're not human.
I get it.
And but I like I said, I think through good parenting you can figure out how to navigate that.
But that's what's so cool about the Shiro's program, right? Because you have, say, like, you buy the Ibtihaj Muhammad doll, even the Ava DuVernay doll, and like think of all the cool things Ava DuVernay has done, right? For you to have especially a white kid, to have that doll and to be looking at her and say, you know what, I want to be a producer. I want to make movies. This is something I want to do, and to envision that as being a black woman.
It's amazing,
right? In spaces that traditionally we're not even, and still to this day not welcome. I think is amazing.
Well, it's all in some ways. It's like one of the greatest achievements of Barack Obama becoming president.
Oh, yeah.
Is that for the kids who were born during that time and became of age 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, when they pictured president,
right?
They pictured a black man every
How
time.
Cool.
And then it made their parents, for the people who grew up in racist households, it made their parents go nuts.
Yeah.
And so then they're going, wait, am I not supposed to like this guy?
And they said, no, you know what? You don't know what America is. Presidents aren't black. Presidents are orange. And then they...
Well, let's
What
go
are you
back.
talking about?
Yeah.
Tell me, how were you introduced to the sport?
Yeah. So I go into depth in the book to talk about, how I got involved in this sport. My parents wanted me to participate in a sport where I could be covered. I was having a really hard time when I was growing up trying to find like spandex to go underneath my track shorts, or, T-shirts that match my volleyball uniform. And it wasn't until I found fencing that I really appreciated what it meant to be in uniform. Like, imagine that moment, you go out on the court, you're with your teammates, there's this unified space, you guys are all together. And for me, I was always missing that. And I didn't have that until I found fencing.
Can you talk about the, obviously we hear in the Western world a lot of people saying how, Islam and the way you practice Islam is one of, keeping women hidden, as you just described, finding a team sport where some people be like, well, that's taking your freedom away.
Yeah.
Talk about your commitment to spirituality, discipline, family, and culture above these other things that a lot of us in the Western world would, sometimes be like, what? women can't drive, or women can't do this, or women should be hidden, or women. Talk about how you and your family unpack that in this environment.
Yeah. So my parents converted to Islam like when a lot of African Americans did back in the 60s and 70s. And
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar,
yeah.
Muhammad Ali, many others.
And, you know, I'm sure there were challenges that they face, just even within their own family of being converts and not having any other Muslim family members, but also trying to raise their kids, you know, to be spiritually driven, to be faith driven in the U.S. And for us, there's always a unique balance. But I think one of the beautiful things about, you know, growing up here in the States is that I have the freedom to kind of be myself and do what I want and not feel, or I shouldn't feel pushback from that. You know, I get that question a lot about the choice to cover and wear hijab. There are a ton of Muslim women who don't wear hijab.
That's right.
And this idea that there's some way, like a restriction and freedom of expression and this being forced upon me, this is something that I choose to do. And like, what more beautiful than the choice to wear what you want, you know? And the idea around women's bodies and ownership and us censoring ourselves, like, I'm not, like, to me, this is a choice. This is something that I choose to do. And I think that's one of the great things about living here. It's like, why can't I have the freedom to wear what I want? Why does it have to be, you know, placed on me for people to say, this is how you should dress? And because you're not dressing this way, you're oppressed. Who are you to tell me that I'm not?
Well, many Americans are full of shit. That's
Right.
the problem. And so while they'll, you know, in one breath market to the world that you could come here and you can be yourself and have freedom of expression and religion and all of these freedoms, in the next breath, once you're here, they either, or the theys that are that way, that are assholes, would tell you to go home, or you should change your ways, or you should assimilate and leave your culture behind and be more American, if you will.
My thing is, people get so caught up in women, or Muslim women who wear hijab. Where is that same anger and hostility towards the Hasidic women that I see in Los Angeles and here in New York? Where's that same energy, you know, when you go and you see nuns who, I mean, I respected that commitment to faith and that choice to cover. I respect it no matter what your faith is. My thing is, there seems to be almost like, you know, I'm not really down with Muslims, and let me single out what I'm going to pick something.
I have the answer. I know why the energy is not the same.
Right.
It's because most of those Hasidic women and Jewish women that you see are not black or brown.
Right.
And so it's easier to attack the black and brown women and isolate them than it is to attack white
I think
women
you're
who
also,
are
you
choosing.
can't remove Islamophobia from that too, though.
Well, and then there's that layer
yeah.
also.
Like, I mean, you could factor, you go to 9/11. There's a million things you could put together as to why, and it's.
But
an
it was
image,
even before that, though. It was before that.
Yeah, I guess
that
it's hard for
energy
me
was
to
before
remember.
that.
I mean, I talk, and I mentioned this in the book. I talk specifically about death threats that I faced, you know, coming into the public eye as a member of Team USA, as an Olympian, and they even got worse after I won a medal at the Olympic Games. And it's frustrating because as a black athlete, you often have to be exceptional to be accepted, right? And then there's this added layer of competing and being expected to perform at your best, come home with medals. Everyone wants a medal, but then you have, you know, to deal with the BS. You have to deal with death threats. My teammates didn't have that. My teammates were white.
Was that race related or religion related more, or is it just a perfect combination of racism and Islamophobia?
One of the things for me with my intersectionality is that I'm never stopping people and being like, hey,
why do you hate me the most?
Why don't you like me, right? Is it my skin? Is it my hijab? You know, like, what don't you like?
You don't want to have conversations with the people who dislike you to unpack their
I'm curious to why.
racism
And I feel like that's always the burden on the minority, to try to figure out, like, what can I do to try to help you? I don't have time for that. That's not even in my...
I love that.
Yeah, I'm not like that. I'm not here to try to explain myself to make you feel more comfortable. I've never been like that. I'm unapologetically black, Muslim. I'm very outspoken. And I'm here to hopefully create a more inclusive space, and so that our youth see themselves in this space that still to this day is not a welcoming atmosphere for women athletes of color, especially religious minorities.
Is there any validity to criticism of hijab? Because I can say personally, being Jewish, I am the exact opposite, and I'm more judgmental about traditions held in Judaism than probably others would be. Like when I see how Hasidic people dress, as a Jew, I'm definitely like, why y'all go this deep? This is a lot. So in looking at Islam as a whole, I'm sure there are progressive Americans who aren't necessarily Islamophobes, but just feel uncomfortable because they're very progressive with the idea of women being covered. Is there any validity to any of those arguments, or do you find the whole practice of it to be something beautiful and not something that anyone should question?
I mean, I'm all about self-choice, and I've never understood the argument of people being in my business. You know what I mean? And just like there are people who I don't understand what they're doing. I don't understand how they move, why they operate the way that they do. But I feel like that's on them. And I'm always focused on myself. How can I leave this world a better place? That's my goal, right? And everything that I do as an athlete, as an activist, I feel like that's always my intention. And to sit around and try to figure out, you know, why someone's dressed a certain way, that's not helping me reach my goal.
True.
You've been open about anxiety, like dealing with anxiety. I just want you to talk about how you dealt with all of that. Not only are you a woman of color, you're dealing with, you know, all this, you know, death threats, but on top of that, you are competing at a very high level.
Yeah.
So how did you navigate through that? How did you deal with your anxiety?
Yeah, so I had, I suffered from depression for quite a long time as a member of Team USA, and I didn't know it was depression. I didn't know what that, like how to label it. I didn't know that's what I was experiencing. But I knew that I was experiencing this paralyzing anxiety right before I would compete. And this is when I'm at my highest level of sport, you know, like number 6, 7 in the world. I couldn't compete. I wasn't winning. I was going out in my very first round because I would wake up fatigued. I would get to the fencing strip, and I couldn't move. And I didn't know what was going on, and I remember having these conversations with my sister and my mom. They were the only people I talked to about it. But I'm like, you know, I can't explain my sadness. I can't explain why I feel this way. And my mom, like, I love her, but she's I love my mom, but my mom's very, very pious woman, and she's like, you need to pray more. She thinks I can, you know, pray this sadness that I was feeling.
Sounds like a black mom.
Yeah.
Sounds like a black mom.
Sounds like a
right?
black mom. Just pray.
Just
pray.
pray
Pray
on
more.
it.
Pray
Yeah.
more.
Yeah. But I think that, you know, this is a larger issue, not just within the Muslim community, but also in the conscious of the Black community, and
Of
how we don't
course.
talk about, you know, mental health. And I was fortunate enough to have a sports psychologist on our team that I was able to talk to and realize that I was having performance anxiety specifically. But I know that a lot of the anxiety that I felt around Team USA, which lasted longer than 2 years, and I would argue throughout the duration of my career, has to deal with my teammates and the coaching staff not wanting me there, not wanting me to occupy this space of being on the national team. And I think a lot of that pushback has to do with, you know, them feeling that you're different and not knowing how to deal with you. It's like, you know, when you're a black one, when you're coming to a space, you're always trying to combat these stereotypes. And even as a Muslim, it's like you're trying to show people that you're not what you think they are. You're not angry. You're not mad. You know, for me, you know, you're not
Overcompensate.
right. And I did that for years, for my first few years on the team. And at some point I was like, you know what, this is ridiculous. This is, you know, taking away from my happiness. This is affecting how I'm competing. This isn't helping anything. And in 2015, I thank God for this every day. I said to myself, like, I'm done. I'm not going to continue to try to, like, appease the people around me. Like, they're my teammates. They don't like me, whatever. They're the coaches. They don't like me, whatever. I'm going to just push through this moment. I need to qualify for this team. I feel like I needed it for us as a people because it's in this time, this is 2016, the team is still white. There never been a woman of color on the U.S. women's saber team before me. And I don't want that for the next generation. I want them to see themselves in that space.
So you speak about your coaches not liking you and your teammates not liking you, or just not knowing how to embrace you because there's a cultural disconnect?
Not even, I mean, and that sounds like, to me, almost like so elementary to say like, oh, they don't like me. It's not that. It's, you know, it's small things that add up to bigger things, you know, like the management team not booking hotels for me, not booking flights, not telling me when team practices are. So it's like, why weren't you at practice? You know, why weren't you here? And it's like, well, no one told me there was practice. And it's like, you need to be here. This is a problem. and there's different repercussions that you have to face because you weren't at practice. And it's like, well, how can I know if no one tells me? Like, it's easy to email me, but I feel like there was intention behind leaving me off emails.
With the I mean, there's a perceived, and where I sit, I see fencing as like this prestigious sport, right?
Expensive sport.
Expensive, and
Yeah.
maybe that's also why I see it that way, because
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like, it seems expensive, and where do they do
Well,
this?
how do
And
you learn it? Where do you
Right.
get
Where does this
equipment?
go?
Who
And
teaches
who are
you?
these people?
It's in neighborhoods where higher tax brackets. You find it in white neighborhoods and private schools. There's a ton of high
So
schools
in some
Jersey
ways,
that
it
have
is prestigious.
All right.
Do you feel like there is an image that the greater fencing world is trying to keep, and somehow this black woman who is also Muslim fractures their ability to maintain this pseudo prestige?
There are a lot of coaches in the fencing world who came over into the U.S. when the Soviet broke up. And so they're from these former Soviet nations that have really myopic views when it comes to women, people of color. Like, I've heard
They're racist and sexist.
right? Basically.
Okay.
So I don't fit into what they expect or what they want the team to look like. And it's also like a lot of nepotism that goes on. Like, the national coach wants his students on the team, his athletes on the team. And also, I mean, when you look at this idea of, having a black woman break into this space, they're not ready for it. They're
And
not
then
looking
Nike
for
embraces
it.
you, and you get a Barbie doll.
They hate it.
So
I
what's
had
going to
a-
happen on the next Olympics after
Right?
this interview?
I've had coaches not coaches, I've had teammates. These are teammates of mine call some of my sponsors and try to jeopardize, some of my sponsorships. And it's literally just comes from a place of jealousy, resentment, wanting what you have. But that's the nature of the sport. The sport is individual first, very contentious space to exist in. And I mean, people are always trying to pass you. That's just the energy.
Right.
They want what you have.
Another previous guest of ours, Miles Chamley Watson, who did quite well for the U.S. as well, and he's still on the team. Was he influential? Do you think? Did he help any doors open up when there was another prominent fencer of color? Or is it a different world?
Miles and I have been on the team together for forever.
So you guys are the same. You guys are exact contemporaries in terms of timing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm like super black. I'm like I'm like visually a black Muslim woman. You know what I mean? And I think the lane is just a little different when it comes to Miles. But
He was able to operate in that world a little more smoothly?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the difference would be in Miles and I's career. I'm not really sure. But I know that for me, I'm very conscious about my black identity. I can't hide my hijab. Like, I'm Muslim. And there's a different dynamic that exists for me and my team. I'm with a team of white women. And the dynamic is different. Like, on Miles' team, there are 3 minorities on their team. There's Miles, and then there's 2 Asian kids on the team with him, of the 4. And I think for me, and guys and women, for whatever reason,
There's
a difference.
Not to say that there's not like bias and racism with both, but in
Right.
terms of being accepted into group,
Just
I do feel
different.
like men on teams, even if they could go home and be racist, we just saw it with the Brewers, right? Like the way that you accept teammates can be different, and
Yeah.
men and women interact differently.
There's
So I'm
also a
sure-
cultural acceptance that Miles has because he's not Muslim, and he's also not her complexion, and he's
Right.
also, kind of carries himself in more of a white space and a more like he's, Miles is a great dude, he's a cool dude, but he's not like,
he's a bro.
what does that mean?
Like bro, he's a bro. He's down with the boys. Like
But
he's
I
not.
also don't know if Miles identifies as being black. That's another thing.
Well, yeah, that I don't
Like
know.
I tell Miles he's black when I
Right.
see him when we interview him.
So Ebro and I remind Miles of his blackness. Miles is not leading with that foot.
Got it.
Yes.
Right, which inherently makes your
So when
experience
we had
different.
Miles
Oh,
up
for
here, we
sure.
talked about him being black. But Miles
not his
doesn't.
first topic
That's
of
not
conversation.
right.
Did
And
Miles ask you if he was black?
no, he
Okay.
never asked me.
Wait, if you
but
were
I'm-
black or if he was black?
No, if he was black.
No, he wouldn't ask me. But
Excuse me. I asked Ebro that when I met him by myself, and he unfortunately
I told
let
him
me
he was
down.
a black woman. Actually,
And he was like, you are black, and you are also a woman. And I was like,
he was like, yes.
this is big.
So there are so many things. First of all, I would like to say that I am in love with everything you've done. And I've been watching you for, as soon as I heard about you, I was into it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I also obviously love being that I have Muslim family members, and I was raised in my mother's Jewish. I have Muslim family members. I went to a Pentecostal church. So I've seen, my Hebrew teacher was an Ethiopian man when I was 5 years old, right? Like, so I've seen a very diverse world in my existence, which I know is not common, right? So when I see people who don't, who make people uncomfortable, not because they're doing anything other than being themselves and they just don't fit in certain boxes, I'm automatically like 100%, I subscribe, I'm in, and I get it. And I really appreciate everything that you're fighting for and trying to accomplish. And I hope you hear it often, but, I wanted to make sure I said it to you today.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It means a lot to me. I love listening to you guys. I'm sad I don't get to tune in to listen to you every day, but
you can subscribe to the podcast on your iPhone right now, so it'll come to your phone.
We're from
every day.
Maplewood, so you've been on Hot
Yeah.
97 for a while.
Always from as long as I can remember.
Yeah.
No, but I appreciate the work that you guys are doing. I know that you're moving the needle, not just within our community, on the greater context, for acceptance, for inclusion, for diversity. And I feel like we need to hear our own voices and tell our own stories. And this is necessary, like, especially right now.
And by the way,
This is
Miles, we
crazy.
love you. We
Right?
love
Always.
you, Miles.
Miles
we
is
love
my
you.
favorite teammate, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Well, because he's black, and he knows that you're black. But
Why I love Miles.
He gets
By the way,
he gets that light skin.
You may bump into him the second you walk out of this
I know.
building. So.
Yeah, he
I-
runs up
we
and down the
usually
street
do.
right here.
I'm actually, Miles and I are working on helping Miles see his blackness every day.
By the way, you guys should do a video series about that. It'd be amazing.
Right.
But also, I'm just curious because, and we'll let you get out of here, but I just feel that the experience for Muslim Americans, especially Muslim Americans who are Muslim on sight, you know that what they practice based on seeing them. I just imagine the experience is so unique because for all, as much hatred as we see in America right now, a lot of it appears like it's reinvigorated. I'm like, wow, people were hiding from anti-black racism for a little bit. But through that entire time, Islamophobia has just been rampant. I mean, it's the most open. To me, it appears to be the most open bias that exists. You can almost get away with it.
Yeah.
It's almost like for years.
Almost. I feel like people are getting away with it.
Yeah,
For
I
sure.
they do.
Yo, you can't. No, if I were to play a prayer, a Muslim prayer on the radio,
it would be-
people would lose their mind.
They would.
Allahu Akbar to people, which is
that is to people. If they were to hear Allahu Akbar, of course, I just think about Brand Nubian.
What are you guys saying? So funny.
But
how do
people-
you say it?
Not like that.
You know what I'm saying?
Right?
How do you say it?
Are you talking about like Allahu Akbar?
Yeah. There you
Oh,
go.
okay, that was good.
I mean, come on, we don't speak. But no, it's true to Ebro's point, though. People would hear that and think that they take it as offense, like you're going to attack them. So it just, to me, and how are you accepted by being a convert, a child of converts? Is there any sort of, do you get appreciated by born Muslims, or is there any sort of resistance of like, oh, well, your family converted, you're not?
That is, I mean, that's
Super. Is that another 2-hour
You want
conversation?
to talk about Muslim racism,
Right.
Muslim on Muslim
Oh,
racism,
man,
and
forget it.
complexionism inside Muslims.
I know the full day.
and
Yeah.
Muslims in South, the Arabic Muslims not wanting to accept black Muslims and et cetera. It's a
So
thing.
I'm sure it's a lot.
And the slave
quickly.
trade in Saudi
Right.
Arabia
Ebro,
trade.
let me just
Okay,
let her
Ebro.
answer. I don't want to go that
Please.
deep yet. Let's just.
Well, before I forget, the first thing that you mentioned, as a millennial, I believe that the discrimination that Muslims feel in this moment is far worse than it was after 9/11.
Right now?
Right now.
Okay.
I mean, I feel like every day there's something different. It's like I have a story every single day, like crazy stuff. Like I have a clothing company called Luella that I run out of Los Angeles. And just last week I was kicked out of a fabric store. Like on site, walk in, there for 5 minutes, and it's like, excuse me, you need to leave. Why do I need to leave? Your business isn't welcome here. You have to go. Your money is no good. Please leave. And then he gets really
And that's
aggressive.
in Los Angeles.
In Los Angeles. In Los Angeles, downtown LA, Fabric District, last week asked to leave a fabric store. Just because of how I appear, I'm a Muslim woman, it's like you have to go. These are the experiences that I have. I was followed home right after I qualified for the Olympics, right on 28th and 7th, followed home from practice to Penn Station, accused of being a terrorist, accused of having a bomb. The guy told me, I'm going to call the police. I'm going to find the police. Don't move. This is me and my friend. And this is now. We're talking 2016, 2017, 2018. These are the experiences of Muslim Americans in this country. We see it played out on social media. If you're online, you see the crazy things that are going on, the attacks on Black lives, how Muslims are treated. We see it. So,
and you think it's only grown? You think like
I think it's worse.
So it's in 9/11 there was a spike and then it jumped. Since 2001 it's just been growing
But you also
steadily.
had
9/11
leadership that was more nuanced, and I can't believe I'm about to say this. George Bush leadership at the time the tone was smarter. Plus, his family has close ties to one of the richest, like, Saudi Arabian families.
Well,
the Bush families
yes.
and the Bin Laden families very close.
Well, yeah, no, I noticed because they didn't try to pursue anything in Saudi Arabia after 9/11 in spite of
But my
everything.
point being is you had leadership at the time that was, I guess, trying to be more careful. Now you have leadership that the president said the words Muslim ban.
Yeah.
Then tries to act like the news made that up. Fam, you said that.
Yeah, but then also the zero tolerance policy they've enacted and exists today. I've been detained by U.S. Customs for no reason other than wearing hijab, and I have an Olympic medal for the United States. Like, that's crazy.
It's more than
That's
crazy.
crazy.
It's insanity.
It's crazy. So it's not just happening to me. It's not just happening to my sisters, to my mom. These not so microaggressions are occurring every single day. And that's why I'm so, focused on using my voice and my platform to change the way we perceive not just the Muslim community, not just the Black community, but people of color. Like, I went to the border a few weeks ago. It's crazy what's going on, in
They're
our
stealing
country right
babies.
now.
They're stealing babies.
They're stealing and selling babies.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
and it's kind of open.
And it's open, it's no big deal, right? It's like, yeah, we're doing it. What are you going to do about it? And what I say to people is that not only educate yourself, don't, see it, scroll past, take a selfie, post it. This is a time, this is our moment in time to make a change, right? So we all need to get out there and vote. That's actually a thing. We need to do it. No excuses. If you have time to scroll through Instagram, if you have time to listen to Hot 97, you have to get out there and you have to vote. We have to make a change. We have to be agents of change because there's nobody left to do it. This is insane that they're literally selling babies.
Well, it was, to me, what's so striking is the generic line was always like, oh, it's America. We have our problems. We're the greatest country in the world. You can't say that. No. You cannot say that in a moment when your country is stealing babies. There are at least a handful of countries, because don't get me wrong, most of the world's pretty terrible, but there are at least a handful of countries that while they may be doing bad things, they're not stealing babies and selling.
But there's also a really large misconception that this is happening to Mexican immigrants, that this is happening to the Latino community. When I went to the border, I saw nonprofits that are working with Latino immigrants, with the Caribbean immigrant population, that literally there are people from Haiti who take a boat from Haiti to Brazil and then walk 4 to 5 months from Brazil all the way to the U.S.-Mexico border to be detained, to have their blood samples taken, to be fingerprinted, to be mugshotted. And when they go to court, they have no representation. They're representing themselves. The translators are Spanish-speaking translators. They speak Portuguese. They speak Creole. There's nobody translating for them. They're pleading guilty. And then they're sitting in these centers sometimes for 8, 9 years.
Well, it's the new mass incarceration. It's a new cheap labor.
Could you imagine you thinking that you're coming here to flee domestic violence, to flee abuse, to seek asylum, and somebody puts you in prison for 8 or 9 years? That's
it's
crazy.
Insane. Just so insane.
Well, our country, like I said, there's pieces hopefully people will get. First, I want to say I appreciate you continuing to believe in what America could be, right? Because in the beginning of this conversation, despite everything that you're experiencing, you're still sitting here saying that this is a great place to live, to grow up, that you could be who you want to be, so you continue to believe. That right there is the one thing that I find most troubling, right, about the behavior of people who are white supremacists, racists, claim to be patriots, is the fact that you literally have people, no matter how bad you treat them, they still believe in the marketing idea of the country.
Yeah.
No matter showing up at the border, kids being taken away.
Well, it's the best marketing ever. I mean, there's a reason everyone thinks America's the best. I mean, what was said was the lines were so good.
Our forefathers were they wrote out some stuff that was brilliant. It lasted forever. And in fact, they knew.
The idea is brilliant.
The ideas are brilliant. They knew, even if they weren't able to practice themselves, they're like, this ideally is what we should be. And we're just not that. Not right now.
As someone who's African American, this is the only country that I know, right? And I feel like it's a country that was built on the backs of my ancestors.
That's true.
This is all I know. I represent this country at the highest level of sport, and I'm like, I have to do things like you said to make it a place where I want to live and operate. And right now, this isn't the America that I know. Like, what can I do? I wrote an op-ed piece for CNN yesterday to call Trump out on the BS that's happening right now. There are a lot of us who aren't using our platform for change, that aren't using it for good. We have to be willing to speak out for those who unfortunately don't have the platform, who don't have the ability. Maybe they are incarcerated. Maybe they're searching for their kids who aren't given that opportunity to defend themselves.
Well, the reason their kids are being taken is because they're unfit parents, because they were coming to try to find a better life, but they're unfit parents. So now they won't get their kids. Because you're hearing that's happening too. Yeah. These parents are being called unfit parents for fleeing destabilized nations that our country destabilized, right? They're trying to get here for a better life and being told that they're unfit parents.
Kids are being snatched and changing their name to Michael all of a sudden. They'll never know who their parents are. They're real parents.
I have a niece who's 2 and a nephew who's 9, and I just can't even imagine. I can't imagine how they would feel to be in that situation. I mean, I don't even know if they would, like my nephew for sure, wouldn't be able to tell you where he's from, what his parents' names are. You know what I mean? So try to imagine, this is what I tell people, imagine the kids in your life, the kids that you interact with. Like, you have to be empathetic to what's going on.
But they're not empathetic to people who are black and brown. White supremacy in this country has programmed people to look at people who aren't white as something that is not human. Yeah. That's been a part of the process. Not for everyone.
Right.
No, it didn't work on everyone.
It didn't work on everyone, but there are people who can literally get up and not look at brown children or black children like they're regular children.
But they don't even refer to them as children, though. They're just like illegal aliens.
Yo, here in New York City, there's something, it's
Illegals,
there's like New York City alerts or something on Twitter. It'll say 15-year-old black man.
You're like, what?
And I've retweeted it multiple times. I'll be like, yo, when did a 15-year-old become a man? What's happening out here?
Right.
This is a child.
Right.
These are children. There was 2 police officers on the back and neck of a 10-year-old in his front yard. You see these videos and you're like, yo, it's still a 10-year-old, man. That's a 10-year-old. There was 2 cops. Batons out. The fear that gets placed and the anger and all of that angst that goes towards black and brown people is a part of the practice of keeping us in fear, emotionally unstable, angered maybe, so that it's easier to lock us up. It's easier to point to us and see, oh, you're a bitter black woman, you're an angry black woman, see what's going on with you?
Right.
Oh, it's you, it's you, it's you, it's you.
Yeah.
Right? That plays into that narrative, which forces someone like yourself to feel like, yo, I have to overcompensate for these stereotypes. Now I have anxiety. The world is watching me. I'm about to compete in the biggest stage of my life, and everybody's looking at me based on how I dress and my skin color and my gender and, my spirit, et cetera, et cetera. That, now you're owning that instead of the people who place that upon you.
Well, you're saying that for her, which is obviously true, but I mean, it's the way you carry yourself in society.
Every day.
Ebro carries himself so outside of this building, so demure almost, because if he was to really walk up all the time, shoulders up, the way a 5'9" white man could do it, he instantly appears like a threat. Yeah. So it's a 6'2" bearded black man.
Right.
It's crazy. And it's all built into the psyche of this endless cycle. Damn, we getting deep, but it's true.
Well,
Ibtihaj is here, son. We're not going to get another one.
Not with Ibtihaj. Then with who?
Ibti's in the building. Do they call you Ibby or Ibti? What do they call you?
So Peter calls me Ibti. Some of my teammates call me Ibti, but I actually opened the book with why I don't like Ibti.
Really? Why don't you like it?
I don't know, 4th or 5th grade, teacher's like, going through the names, and she's like, whose name is this? And
you always knew it was you, right? My name's Ibrahim.
Right.
So I always knew when they got to my name, I'd just be like,
mind
present.
blown. Your name is not Ibrahim. How come I didn't know this?
My birth name is Ibrahim Jamil.
Whoa, look, you're Muslim. I'm like, repeat after me. So I opened in the book with a teacher saying, your name is too difficult. We're going to call you Ibti. And I was really young. I was like, okay. And that's how it started with this. No one in my family calls me Ibti. Everybody calls me Ibtihaj. And for me,
All the time?
All the time. I could never figure out as a kid, I'm like, but my name is only this many letters, and this girl's name is Elizabeth, and everybody seems to get her name, but struggle with mine. I could never understand that as a kid.
I'll tell you what, though. If I was in your family, I would have come up with something. 3 syllables. That's a lot. For every
my
given
family
moment, if I'm
came
in a
up
rush,
with Ebro.
Ibtihaj.
Yeah.
That's I need one less syllable.
Well, there's 5
No,
kids in my
your mom
family.
will
My
say
mom
it.
called everybody's name before she got to mine. I don't know if that's like a black mom thing. It's like she runs out everybody's name. You better be there by the time she finishes.
Before
Yeah.
you get out of here, are you executive producing stories about women in sports like yours?
I am with Players Tribune and Self. Condé Nast will be telling these stories, not just about female athletes in sports like mine, like fencing, not the ones that you hear about. It's the ones you don't hear about.
Right.
Because if these women who are taking the world by storm and are badasses in their sport, if they were men, we would all know. They would be making tons of money. So I'm really excited to tell these stories.
Yeah, that's a whole other convo around how athletes that are women aren't valued the same, and even how women, like I've had this conversation a lot. I remember when the WNBA started, right? And it was like this whole oh my God, women's basketball. And I heard women saying, I don't want to watch that. You'd be like,
The comments on
You don't
social
wanna-
media kill me around women's basketball. When you look at, I think it was ESPN that posted something about Diana Taurasi or like Sue Bird and them scoring like the most 3-pointers. And it was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like Steph Curry, LeBron. Diana was the last one, right? Number 5. Most out of WNBA, NBA combined, she's number 5 like ever in history. And the comments are awful about, and
I
it's
can't
like,
imagine.
First of all, I bet not one person in the comments can hang with Diana Taurasi on the court. Of
course
right?
not.
Number one.
That goes without saying, yes.
But then it's like, who's working? I know I'm the first person in the gym and the last person to leave. Like, nobody's outworking me. That's how I made it as far as I did. And all of the female athletes are like that. We all have the same mentality. There's no difference between men and women when it comes to sport. Everybody's, out there breaking their back to win championships, to win medals. So for these trolls and people online to have this mentality that women are somehow lesser than or not as talented or not as capable is crazy.
We're taking strides, and I've seen it. I think combat sports have helped a lot, at least for me. I noticed the other day at the ESPYs, the only people I asked to take pictures with, I didn't think about it till I was done.
I didn't see you there. I was there.
You were there too?
Did you have fun?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. I was working. I did red carpet stuff for ESPN. The only people I realized I took pictures with the whole time
Were guys?
was Thug Rose Namajunas
Okay.
and Cyborg. They were the only people that I realized at the end. I was like, those are the only people I cared. I don't want to go up to some random big man and take a picture. Like, you're on the team, it's cool. But individual women athletes, I found to be like, it's very, very exciting.
Yeah.
And I do think we will get there. I think, props to Ronda Rousey. There are people who have taken some steps to get people to believe, but you always have these men and women, to Ebro's point, they've just been trained to not take it seriously.
But also, I think if we think about it even a bit deeper in the way that we are raising like our kids, right? Why not take your kids to go see not just NBA games, right? But to go see the Liberty. I grew up watching the Liberty as a kid. My mom used to take us to the games all the time.
Damn, your family really was woke before woke was woke.
I'm telling you, my mom is the wokest person. My mom had me create a paper mache slave ship in 7th grade. We got to pick our project. Paper mache slave ship. This is what I made. My mom is very woke.
That's amazing.
She's like, they're not going to teach you about Black history. I will teach you. Make the paper mache slave ship.
That's like my daughter's mom. My daughter's mom shows up every year and does the Kwanzaa celebration at my daughter's school, which is mostly Muslim Indian girls and boys, some Asians and white people. I think my daughter might be one of 2 Black kids in her entire school.
And she shows up and is like, we're doing Kwanzaa.
We're doing Kwanzaa.
We're doing
Going
Kwanzaa.
down.
We're doing
That's
Kwanzaa.
amazing.
But I mean, to be honest, I really think that not just women, but we all need to support female sports. Need to show up. We need to buy tickets. It's like, why aren't the women being paid as much? Because people aren't showing up to the games in the same way. But look at like women's soccer. They are phenomenal. Our women's soccer national team, far better than the men have ever been.
Not even close. The
Right.
men are an embarrassment, and the women are one of the greatest teams in the world.
Right, and they don't get paid as much as the men. How?
But to your point, the sexism is rampant in both men and women, right? Because women for some reason feel that it is not feminine to be athletic. It is not feminine. Like I'll hear women say it. Like
Society's created that, right? And look at the way that we're for a really long time, even like projected in media. The images that you see aren't athletic women, right? There's something, even as kids, there's a severe drop off in kids' involvement in sport at the age of 12, like around puberty. And there's things that I feel like, I think things are changing just in the way we think about being fit, we think about being active, and even Nike creating a pro hijab, right? Having a sports hijab is changing the way Muslim, not just girls, but Muslim women in general think about being active and being healthy in a way
That's crazy. That just that little thing happening though.
You have no idea.
That's aspirational. It makes you think like, oh, that would be cool if I rocked that.
I wasn't gonna bring it up because I honestly thought it was stupid, the blowback that it got. That was like, really, Nike, you're creating this, but you embraced it, and I was kind of like, well, why would everybody be mad at this?
I mean,
the same way they make anything from sports.
Outside the community, inside the community. Like, there are Muslim people who are like, there are companies who have done this before. We don't need it. Why is Nike trying to profit off, the backs of Muslims? And it's like, but you wear their sneakers. But you wear, their tops. To me, that didn't make sense. It's like, why not create something? And I know for me as an athlete, that sport hijab changed my life. I didn't know what it felt like to hear on the strip. I was getting carded. You know how you get a yellow card, red card, soccer, you get fouls in basketball?
Right.
If you get 2 yellow cards in fencing, it's a red card. It's a point against you. I would false start, not be ready, and the referees, like, they're ridiculous. They're even, I believe, harder on me as an athlete of color and as a Muslim woman. They just card you. You're not ready, card. You're American, card, right? So I would get these points scored against me because I couldn't hear. And I didn't know I couldn't hear until I put on the pro hijab. It changed the way I was able to train. It's a lot cooler to train in terms of the temperature. Like, I could feel wind on my neck for the first time, which was nice. But also in that I can hear. So for me, it was life-changing, game changer. I know what it's doing for kids. There's a little kid who sent me a message. Kids made fun of her for wearing her hijab, and she was on the soccer team. When she wore her Nike hijab to school, even the boys were like, man, that is so cool. Like, I love it. It's like one thing. You know how it is when you're a kid. You got
that logo.
New J's. You got
that
a logo on.
Of course, you feel accepted.
Yeah, you feel accepted. So I think that it's transforming kids' lives in more ways than one.
Shout out to Nike. People always find a reason to hate on everything.
I know.
It seems awesome to me.
Ibtihaj. If you can say Elizabeth, you can say Ibtihaj.
Yes.
That's right.
Gosh darn it. Give it up. Check out the book.
Thank you.
Proud.
Yeah.
What is it? My Fight for an Unlikely American Dream, where I'm sure you cover all of this stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, go get it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your time
You guys
today.
are awesome.
Yes.
Yeah.